Greetings hobbyists, this is All, and in this video we're going to have a look at how to quickly and effectively make weld beads for when you're modelling metal objects. So in the last video I was working on this tank turret, and I've been having an interesting conversation with a friend because both of us watch a channel called Night Shift, and this is a guy whose channel focuses on creating realistic tanks, modelling them in real life, and one of the greatest things he does is he just adds a lot of little bits of extra detail to make those tanks look real, including weld beads. So a big shout out to Night Shift for inspiring this video, and you really should check out his channel if you do any modelling in real life. It is absolutely fantastic. Now back to this tank that's set in a sci-fi future, and in this universe generally most of the tanks seem to be bolted together. I think that's just a modelling choice because it means that you can add lots of extra detail to these plastic kits. But as my friend and I were discussing this, we were wondering how easy it would be to actually make these weld beads in terms of a 3D design. So this set me on the challenge of trying to make a weld bead, and in this instance we can have a look at joining together this part of the turret, so the cupola, which I'll probably pronounce horribly, to the main turret itself. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate how I did this using some other objects because it's going to be easier to explain, and then I can bring this into this reference. So I'm just going to shift an A, mesh, and I'm going to bring in a cube. Let's S to scale that up, G to bring it around somewhere here. And then what I'm going to do is to make it have a curved surface as well as a flat surface, I'm going to go into edge mode, select those two edges, Control and B, and just do something like that. Let's press C so that we can clamp that there. Now just to double check this, because sometimes this doesn't actually merge those together, I'm just going to press A, M, and by distance, and yes, that's removed those two vertices there. So let's go into that, and I'm going to shift and D, and I'm going to create a duplicate of this. So what I've done here is make sure that I've got a lot of vertices or edges in one place, and then I've got a flat bit as well. So let's rotate this round to whatever angle, and then let's just connect those together somewhere like that. So that we've got these bits that are flat as well as bits that are more rounded, which could cause complications in this process. And for both of those, I'm going to Control and A and apply the scale. So to do this effectively, we are going to need to use geometry nodes. Otherwise, this would take a very long time. Now, if you haven't used geometry nodes before, I've got a couple of other videos on these, and I know they can be a bit intimidating. But this is actually going to be a relatively simple setup, and it's going to give a good demonstration of what geometry nodes can do. So I'm going to treat this as if you haven't used a geometry node before, and I'm going to go through this step by step. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in an object that can act as our geometry node. Now in this instance you always have to put geometry nodes onto something like a modifier, and because we want these two objects, or in the instance of the turret, these two objects to remain, we have to bring in a separate object, and that object can be pretty much anything. I'm just going to shift an A and bring in a cube, just because that's what I always do. And you'll notice my cube is over here. I'm actually just going to bring it over here, but it really doesn't make a difference where it is. That's pretty much going to disappear as soon as I start doing the geometry nodes, but as I said, we have to have an object to have that on. I'm going to press F2 and rename that weld bead, just so it's easier to find. Now to add a geometry node, all we do is we go into the modifier stack, click Add Modifier, and then geometry node just here, and we've got this geometry node, and we can press new, but what we've got to do is have a place to edit this, and to do that we need to make or bring up a window. So I'm going to bring up the timeline, which I very rarely use, and I'm going to change this to something else. If you don't have this, so for example it will look like this. If you don't, what you need to do is just go to any corner until you get this cross that looks a bit like a targeting reticule, pull up or pull to the side, and you've got that, and at the moment it's just another window. Come up to the top left hand corner, and we just need to change that to geometry node editor. And as long as you've clicked on an object, you're now using the geometry nodes for that object. And I want a new one, so I'm going to press plus for a new geometry node. Now I'm going to scale this up. I still want to be able to see this so that I can talk you through what we're doing and some of the problems or difficulties with this, but more just making sure you understand how it works, because actually this isn't too bad. So at the moment, this is our geometry node, and we've got our group input, which at the moment is the geometry of our square, and then we've got our group output, which is whatever geometry is being sent to it. Now, we don't care about this cube, so we're actually just going to come straight in and delete this, and you'll notice my cube has disappeared. I've still got its origin, and if I come down to wherever my weld bead is, I'm still selected on it, and I've still got my modifiers here. It does exist, but there's no geometry being assigned to it. So that's why we can't see anything. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go sort of forward and backwards on this process to essentially tell you how I made this. So this is the process that I went through, and I think it's going to be easier to explain it that way. And the thing that's great about geometry nodes is it's very easy to add things into it partway through. So what we need to do first of all is tell the geometry node that we're interested in these two objects. We've got a cube here and a cube here. I'm just going to rename these. So F2, I'm going to call this test cube 1, and then I'm going to rename this one, so F2 test cube 2, just to make it easy to find, and it will put it near my world bead. So I need to click back on my world bead to say that I'm doing or dealing with these geometry nodes. So just like in our normal viewport, to bring in a new geometry node, you just press Shift and A, and you've got this huge list of things that you might want. So at the moment, I want an input, and I want something for another object. So I'm going to go to Object Info node. And this allows me to select another object. And you've got that here. All I need to do is press there, and I've got my long list of objects. Or just like other modifiers, you can click the pipette and then click on whichever object you want. Now I'm going to need 2 of these because I'm using or involving 2 objects. So I'm just going to select on that Shift and D, and again, just like normal Blender commands, it will duplicate that. Now I'm going to want to bring these together. So this is the important bit. I'm going to Shift and A, and I need a Boolean. I'm going to be honest, I'm not even sure where this comes on this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go into search, and I'm just going to type in Boolean, and I'm going to Boolean the meshes. So I'm going to bring that in here. And here you've got your options for your different Booleans. So you've got a difference, a union, and an intersection. And this was my biggest problem. You want a union for this to work. You can actually get this working with an intersection, but it doesn't work as perfectly and in all circumstances. A union works better. And then you're going to put the meshes into this Boolean. So you grab the geometry node, stick it to the mesh, and you can see this node is wider. The reason that is because you can put more than one thing into it. I'm going to move that into it as well. Now at the moment we haven't said what we're doing this for, so all I'm going to do is grab my pipette I want for my test cube 1, and for this one for my test cube 2. And at the moment nothing's happening. And the reason for that is we aren't putting our mesh to our output. So I'm going to drag that along here, and you can see we've got something that doesn't quite appear to be working. And the reason for that is that at the moment we haven't said where this is going on. We've got these objects working on the original position of my cube, and there's no intersection where that originally is. So we need to change this to relative. What that will do is instead we'll say, don't do this where the object origin is of or where the cube was, do it over here. So if I go to relative, you'll notice it's gone over here because it's now doing the relative for test cube 1, and I want the relative for test cube 2 as well, and now it's got those combined together. So if, for example, I hide my 2 test cubes, you can see we've got that from my weld bead. Now, we don't want all of this. The weld should only occur where the boundary is between them, or the line where they're intersecting. And what's really good about that is that we've got an option here for intersecting edges, but we have to bring that to something, and there's no place for that to go on my group output. So what we're going to do is tell this to go to somewhere. So if I press Control and A and type in mesh 2, and then we've got to curve, we're going to turn this into a curve. And all I need to do is drag that into the line, select, and at the moment we've got all of the curves, or in fact all of the edges that have been converted into curves, but we only want the intersecting edges. That's what's so powerful about these nodes. You can't do this quickly without this. So let's breathe that into the selection, and now we've got where they are intersecting perfectly there. And you can see that now with this line. I'm going to say I'm causing myself a bit of a problem because we've got a little bit of overlap there, and just for the sake of simplicity, this would actually work. It would create a world there as well, but I'm just going to G and move that out a little bit. And let's go back to my world bead. And you can see that this has moved it. What's so cool about this is, like other modifiers, it's not destructive. It hasn't actually done it yet. So we can still, for example, G and move this around, and it's going to work, which is really cool. So let's go back into this. So we've got our mesh to curve, and we need to create these weld beads now. We've got the line of where we want this to work. Now this is where you have to get a bit into some, well, sort of lateral thinking of what's this weld bead going to look like. And to me, I think these world beads look like a load of spheres that are smushed into each other, that basically you get one on top of the other, at least for a good world. Even for a bad world, it sort of looks like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a sphere on each one of these points. If I hide these two test cubes, basically on each bit of this edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Shift and A, and I'm going to use instancing. And we want an instant on point. So each point of this curve, we want there to be an instance. So I'm just going to click that there, and you'll notice it's disappeared. That's nothing to worry about. It's because at the moment, we haven't told it what instance to use. So we need to make something to get instance on this. And we could do this with another object that we bring in here and select it in with an object info node. That's perfectly fine for you to do, but I'm just going to press Shift and A, and I want a primitive, and I just want an icosphere. I'm choosing an icosphere, not a UV sphere, because the mesh is a little bit more well distributed. You don't get a point at the top, and then I can just drag that into my instance. And you'll notice all my icospheres appear. And at the moment, this is not looking very circular, so I'm going to put my subdivisions up to something like that. Maybe a bit more than we need at this scale, but that's going to be fine. And you'll notice this doesn't look very good. If I bring in my two test cubes, you can hopefully notice why. What we've got here is we've got each one of these points, each one on the world bead line. So we've got an intersection of, let's say, if I just make this a bit smaller and bring in my pen, you can see we've got a line here coming down, and then we've got the line that was coming up here. And each one of these lines where they intersect there and there and there, you're getting one of these spheres. The problem is, at each one of these corners, you've got this huge gap between these lines. So this isn't going to look like a good world there. You can see what we're sort of getting here, and we're starting to get. Don't worry, we're going to fiddle around with this more. But this is a problem. So we need to solve this problem, and that's actually relatively easy to do. We just need to tell Blender that we don't want to have this being each point it intersects. We want the curve to be more equally broken up. And we can do this, if I just bring this over to the side, with what we call a resampling of the curve. So if I press Shift and A and type in resample curve, bring it in here, and you'll notice we've now got this more even distribution of these points. Now, I'm starting to think this would be a really good way also of doing things like rivets. So just something interesting to think about here. And all we need to do, because these are far too far apart, is up this count, and we can just drag that along to get it wherever we want. Now, at the moment, if I sort of look at this in comparison to my tank turret, these icospheres are vastly too large. So I'm going to bring this radius down quite a lot, and we can just do this, if I go in here, by just moving them up and down. So I'm thinking something about that size, like 0.4, and I can just up my count so that they're intersecting, or that they're sort of merging together into one of these world beads. Maybe actually 0.3, and up that count a bit more. But whatever we do, we can just always fiddle around with this later, which is really useful. So yeah, this is starting to look okay, but we want the ability to, well, this, if I just click off, this is basically, actually, let's up that count a bit more, something like there. This is basically like a perfect weld. Look at it. It's like everything's really evenly done. This means that each time this was getting welded, there's been an equal spot or equal amount of time on each spot. And that's not very likely to happen, especially in the lead up to some sort of war. If you look at tanks, I spent quite a bit of time going to the Imperial War Museum in London. It's a great place to go. Also, if you want to see some really good things for tanks, go to Bovington in Swanage. If you're in the UK. If anyone's got any other really good places to visit for this sort of inspiration, please do put a comment in the comment section, and maybe even a link so that people have places to go. But you very rarely see worlds like this. I mean, if everything's being prepared in a rush, it's not going to look like this. So we're going to randomize the size of these world beads. And we can do that really easily with our instancing, where we just can change the scale. You'll notice that at the moment we've got the radius of my icosphere as its own unit, so at the moment 0.3 units, but I can also up my scale on the X, Y, and Z. I'm just going to put those back to 1. But we can also make this be scaled randomly by putting in a random value node. So if I go to here and random value, make sure this is on float. And if I put this value, now at the moment we've got a minimum of 0. I don't want a minimum of 0. I want, let's say, a minimum of being about half the size. Notice this will be related. These are values related to these sizes. So at the moment, I want something that maybe goes 0.5 as a minimum and the maximum of being up to 0.3. I just bring that value into the scale and you can see what's happened. We've got some being bigger, some being smaller. It's all random. There's no one single pattern to this, which makes a much more convincing weld bead. And what's really cool about this is I can start playing around with it. If I think this has been really badly made, I might have it look like this. So you've got the differences in the weld beads. If you've got it being a bit better, let's put that to like 0.8. You can do that and you've got less variation, or like 0.7 and things like that. So you can start fiddling around with this to make this different. I'm going to put this to 0.6 just so we've got a little bit more variation. And let's have a look at this and let's maybe fiddle around with the count because we're basically getting to the end. So I can bring this down so that we've got a bit more spacing between them, something like that. So this is looking pretty good. I'm quite happy with this as a weld bead. I think it looks really nice. And what's cool about this now is if I just grab one of these cubes and press G, it will move with it. It works at all points. Like here we've got it being welded there and it being welded for the other part. I mean, this is so cool that you can just sort of, and you notice it has got this little bit sticking out the top, so I could just G that and move that up. So we can see that. Now I will say actually this spacing might be a little bit off now that I've started moving it around. So we can see here that there are some gaps between them. And that's because, and this is something to be aware of, this resampling of the curve here just gives you a total count. Oh, it can be done by length. That's going to be a better answer, actually, because then you won't have this problem. If you go to count, I hadn't even considered that. When you go to count, this means that you've got a total amount along the weld bead, which means that if you end up with having here, we've got a really long length, you'd have to turn this count up a lot. And then if you then grab this object and press G and move it down so there's a lot less, say here, you'll notice it gets really bunched up and looks rubbish. So if I come back to my weld bead and then change this instead of being to count to being to length, this is going to be much better. And let's bring that up so we've got something about there. So this will mean that now we don't have that problem. So if I go from count to length and press G, you'll notice now this gives a much better and consistent value. So that's much nicer. Let's down that length a little bit more just so they're a little bit closer. So there we go. So the main things here were sorting out this resampling of the curve to make this work nicely and to end up with whatever you want. If when using this by clicking on it and moving around it's ever going too much, you can always just come in and type in a value, so 0.25 for example there. Now, the final thing we need to do is we need to actually make these instances a real object. At the moment, instances work in the idea that they're sort of theoretical until you say otherwise. And if this was here, I could do this, or click on my weld bead and go to Control A and then go to make instances real, and that would mean that now all of the instances are actually objects. But I don't want to have to do that. I want this to remain something where I can move it around. So we can do this again in geometry node, so we don't have to. All I need to do is add in here, Control and A, and I want to add in here, and this is called realize instances. I wish they'd just call it the same thing. I don't know why they've made that decision, but as soon as we plug that in there, we don't see anything really happening, except for if I just get rid of those and put it there, you can see here each of the spheres is its own thing. As soon as I put the realize instances in, it's now you can tell it's just working on the boundary. So these have been made into one object. Now, there's one limitation to this as a geometry node. I'm just going to move that out and move this nice and large. So if you want to take a photo of it or a screen grab, you can do. That's where we're going to end. Okay, in terms of the modification we have to do here, there's no more nodes to add in. This is actually not too bad and it all sort of makes sense. But do remember we want to be able to modify our length here for our resample curve, and we probably want to change our minimum and our maximum of our random sizes for the icospheres. So this is working at this point, but we do have one more issue, and that's the problem that if I want to use this for 3D printing, at the moment if I come into this, each one of these is its own sphere, and we want to bring this together or merge this together as one. Now we're going to use another modifier here called the Remesh modifier, and you can see what that's done here. it's remeshed everything to be one object. All we need to do here is fiddle around with the voxel size until we get this looking right. I will say, if you put your voxel size really high, so for example at the moment it's 0.1, if I put this to something like 0.5, you're going to see, well, basically nothing. So if this looks horrible and suddenly disappears, it's because this remesh is too large. So it started at 0.1, and I don't think this shows the weld bead so much, so let's half that to 0.05, and that's probably about what we want. Maybe 0.03, let's have a look. I mean, we can do there if we want. It depends on what you need. But do bear in mind that when you're doing this, it's adding a lot of different geometry to this. But importantly, as I go into this, you can see this is one solid object. So we've got that all sorted now. So at this point, we've got that working. We've got our weld beads. And still, if I press G and move it around, okay, there's going to be a bit of delay depending on how fast your computer is, but we can do that. Now, what's even cooler than this is because this is working off, if I go to the weld beads, and notice you can't see the geometry nodes here until you click on the geometry node, so don't worry if you're sort of clicking on your remesh, you can't see that, don't have a heart attack, it's not gone, you've just got to click on the geometry node. What's really fun about this is this isn't going to be something that's limited to just two objects, because we're doing a union, and you can union Boolean more than one object. So if I press Shift and A, mesh, and bring in, let's say, a cylinder. Where's that gone over there? And then G and bring it over. Let's just scale that up a bit. Let's rotate it, and then Control and A and apply the scale. If I come back to my weld bead, and do note this might slow your computer down if you don't have a particularly good computer. If I go to my Object Info node and press Shift and D, and bring in another one and get rid of my test cube 2. Actually, let's rename this to F2 test cylinder and come back to my weld beads. If I select this to be that cylinder and drag that into my mesh, it will do it for that as well. It was basically instantaneous. So we can, to this central object, add as many things as we want to make these weld beads, and then just each time bring in a new object here to add to our union. How fantastic is that? Now, I do wonder if actually if I press G and bring this over on top of the other one, if it's going to have some... No, it doesn't. Look at it. You've got all these really cool bits where even on the points where it joins together, you don't have a problem here. So that is our weld beads, all sorted. Now at this point, what I want to do is change this so that we're not using the weld beads for these objects. We want it between what we intended, our two parts of our turret. So I'm going to come to my weld bead, I'm going to delete this one, don't need it, and I'm going to get rid of these two. And all I'm going to do is select that I want the turret, which may take a bit of time, and at the moment you'll notice it's causing some weird funky problem because it doesn't have the other one that it's being combined with. And then I'm going to select the other part, and we've got our weld bead. And if I decide this isn't the final position, I want to move this around, so G, I can move it around. And the weld beads will go with it. So simple, so effective. Geometry nodes are absolutely amazing. Honestly, this is going to be the future. I'm saying that now, and I've said it before. For doing things like this is so good. So there we go. We've got our weld beads. And if we want to finalize this, all we need to do is click on the weld beads. And as always, we just need to apply the modifiers. I'll just click apply all. And we've got that working. And then we can just Boolean everything together. Hopefully, if you haven't tried geometry nodes before, that's going to inspire you to give them a go. It's quite an easy setup. All you need to do if it doesn't look like it's working is play around with some of those sizes. That's going to be the thing that's causing the problem. As always, if you found this video useful, I'd really appreciate you giving it a like. And if you aren't subscribed, do subscribe to the channel if you want to see more things like this. And depending on what you want, do say in the comments, do you want more things with geometry nodes, or do you prefer the more traditional sculpting and hard surface modeling? Do let me know. I want to make the channel as useful for you as it can be. Have a great day, guys.